Thursday, May 7th, 2026, 5:45 p.m. City Hall, 3300 Corinth Parkway. View live stream, https://www.corinth.texas.government remote session. Notice is hereby given a workshop session and a regular meeting of the Corinth City Council. Call the meeting to order. First item is to conduct a workshop to consider the proposed rules of procedure for boards, commissions, and committees. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and members of the audience. Mayor, we wanted to put this on the agenda tonight to walk through some changes we are recommending on a couple different policies. The first one being procedures for our boards and commissions, and basically this is just trying to bring the policy up to date, frankly, for what we're doing now. This is a very, very old policy, and we found some things in there. Actually stumbled across it looking something up, I think a few months ago. Lana and I were talking, and Emma, and found that this is just frankly very, very antiquated and doesn't represent the process, frankly, that's in place today. And so I'm going to let Emma kind of walk through what some of these changes are. I think everything we're doing relative to boards and commissions is being done correctly, but we just have a policy lying out there that doesn't really reflect that, if I may. So, Emma, you want to?
Thank you, Scott. Just to echo what Scott said, we're updating this just to match the reality of what we do now. The other one was almost 20 years old, so definitely due for a revamp. I'm not going to read this word for word, but just wanted to point out some major points to y'all. But of course, if you have anything else in here that you'd like to discuss further, that's why we've brought it to you here for workshops. We can make sure we're good to go. So the first section I wanted to draw attention to were the application procedures. So previously the document just generally talked about recruitment processes and so forth, and so we wanted to codify what we do with the application process online and how we as staff handle that to the point of y'all doing interviews if you should elect to. We did talk about application timing, and we'll probably tweak this for the final version. We said posting it no later than May 1st. I don't think we've posted the ones for this year yet, but that was just kind of an arbitrary date we were generally thinking, so we will adjust that. For interviews, this was optional in the original document, and we left that as an option here. So applicants may be interviewed as deemed necessary, so it's something you guys can elect to do, but you don't have to do. And with application retention, we were proposing that those who apply and aren't appointed to a board, if you have a surplus of applicants, we'll hang on to that application for the duration of that year. And if somebody falls off a board or whatever happens, we can keep those on file for that year. But then that resets each year. So if they want to be considered again for the following cycle, they need to reapply when that becomes available again. For eligibility, the previous document just said that they had to be qualified voters during tenure, so we wanted to add some more solid guidelines for that. We're proposing that they be residents of the city for at least 6 months preceding the appointment date, and then that they're registered to vote or will become registered to vote on or before the application closing deadline. That applies to everyone except for our TERS 2 board. That one's a little special because it's a TERS 2 board. They do get county representation on it because the county participates in that, so we added a little paragraph just calling that out specifically. For appointments, we also cleaned this up a little bit. There was some language in here which we left the red lines in so y'all could obviously see what we changed. And it's kind of hard to read, but Basically, it talks about how each council member can nominate one name and the mayor may nominate two names. And then as vacancies occur, there's a rotational nomination process, which I've never seen happen. So I don't think that is applicable to how we do things now. So we elected to strike that and are just proposing that we proceed with how we've been doing it in the city council meetings, where y'all discuss and appoint from there. And then attendance. This attendance policy was a carryover from the original document as well, but we just cleaned up the language. It still is, you can't miss more than 3 consecutive regularly scheduled meetings. And then you cannot miss more than a quarter of the regular meetings during a single year. Of course, if there's extenuating circumstances or whatever happens, as long as you communicate that, we left language in there to allow that grace if needed. But we will be keeping track of attendance, so we'll report that to the city manager if we notice that somebody's continually missing a meeting, and then from there, bring it back to y'all for consideration at that point. And alternates, we just stipulated that they only need to come to meetings as needed, but they should always be ready to come in, because that's the nature of that role. And then vacancies, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but we created a section just for that. So like when a position is declared vacant, what qualifies for that, how a replacement process would go. We did add, and I think this was carried over too, that if it's a group that has alternate members like PNZ, that they would get priority for becoming a full member in that instance. If they don't have alternates and we have those surplus applications I mentioned earlier, then we would defer to those. But of course, you guys reserve the right to open that process back up and solicit more applications if needed. And if anybody resigns, just asking that it be in writing as soon as possible, and then deferring back to that replacement process. And then removal, this was in here, but again, just giving it clear language. Regular and alternate members may be removed prior to their term expiration if a majority vote elects to do so. And, oops. This is pretty general. I accidentally snipped out something I shouldn't have on this version, so I'm gonna hop over to the redlined version just for transparency. So I'm sorry. Under section I, this is just articulating the duties of the chairperson, vice chairperson, how they're appointed. P&Z is a little special because they have specific rules about that in the charter, which we noted here. But yeah, general duties, I accidentally snipped that out from the red line version. So just giving general idea of what they're supposed to be doing, of course leading the meeting, summarizing major points, making sure everybody is acting accordingly, both on the board and attendees, and just maintaining order. Section K, stay. Working with city staff, there was language in here about staff liaisons, but to clean that up, we just specifically laid out what a staff liaison is, how that role interacts with the board members, making sure it's very clear to everybody that board members, their main point of contact when participating is their staff liaison. And should they need anything else, they can contact the city secretary for further direction. And finally, public comments and public hearings. This is pretty much in line with how we run things in the council meeting. So again, just clarifying that and making it very apparent that we're adhering to those standards. The 3-minute rule of public comment, how public hearings work, opening and closing those, notating the times, and so forth. But those were, I think, the biggest points that I wanted to point out. If there was anything else that y'all noticed or had comments on, definitely open to your suggestions.
That's good.
Good job. Thank you. Good job.
Well, I do have a question though, alternates, why do they not, are not required to come to the meetings? Seems to me like if they're an alternate, they should be here and be learning what's going on because they need to do the spot.
No, that makes sense.
And we do encourage that for sure, but it's just a very good point. But I think they're coming, but it's just, it is not required. But you could make that, I mean, you could do that.
If we put that in there, then that gives you. like, you're-
Leverage.
Is there a reason we
you're
couldn't
not
do that?
required.
No, I mean, generally, just the alternate's there. We check to find if we have a quorum before we're gonna meet, and then we call the alternate. So if people are willing and that's not gonna inconvenience them, I mean, some people just don't wanna come if they don't get to participate. They don't get to participate, so. That's kind of
I
boring.
like that idea though.
And if we did add that language, going back to the general rule about like not missing more than 3 consecutive meetings and not missing more than a quarter, would that apply then to the alternates too? Ideally, if. Yeah. Yeah.
I wondered.
Okay.
What do we have alternates on? Just being anything else?
And Z.
B and Z, BOA,
That's it.
I think those are the only two.
Is he the only one?
BOA never meets anyway.
They haven't met.
Funny thing is, I was an alternate for Board of Adjustments, and I did get called one time. I was in such shock. Very strange.
Was it for the training? They have
No,
not
it
met
was-
since I've been here.
It was for Mary's little shed. It
Mary Shed.
was like an extra shed or something.
We can make that.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
Any other comments, questions? Very good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Emma.
Appreciate you doing it.
I'm sorry, I meant to ask one. The one fundamental question I've run into in the past on eligibility is resident for how long before? That's typically one that I've seen differences. We have it as 6 months, and we left it as 6 months. Some cities it's a year. I've had that kind of debate in other places I've been. I don't have any super strong feelings about it. You do a year, kind of makes sense. They got more time in the city to get familiar, but when you're sometimes struggling to find applicants, you're limiting yourself a little. We're fine with 6 months, but that is one that I've seen somewhat debated. But if you're all right with 6 months,
Unless we're having issues with the 6 months thing.
we're not.
It's not.
Change it.
Move here and can't.
Okay. Anything else?
Not on that one.
Okay. Okay, item number 2, hold a discussion on proposed revision of Chapter 30 of the Code of Ordinances, City Council of Title III Administration.
Thank you, Mayor. Very similar situation. That section of the code we found had several things in there that were old, antiquated, needed to be cleaned up. This is specific to city council and their role and procedures. Patricia's going to kind of run through the key points of that. A lot of it was just simple cleanup, as you saw in your red line version. A couple things we might need to get some direction on, just to make sure what we bring back to you for approval is what you want to see. So Patricia helped obviously prepare all this and look at this, so I'm gonna let her kind of walk through it.
And this really was a cleanup, taking out things like in the books and typewritten and things like that, to get rid of some of those things. And also to kind of add some general references in, like in accordance with the charter, as opposed to some more specific items. So, like I said, essentially, like on the attendance, there was a lot of information in here about excused absences and work schedules and things like that. Well, the charter says if you miss 3 consecutive as a council member, then you're gonna, and they're not excused by the council, then you're gonna forfeit your seat. So, Same thing, adding like references to state law when it talks about, behaviors of council, misconduct, things like that. And right to the floor, we had some language in here about people, you couldn't speak again until every member had spoken, so we fixed that to every member's been given a chance to speak, so we're not waiting for somebody who doesn't want to talk. Added some references to the city secretary that, she's gonna have duties and as required by the charter. Suspension of the rules, any provisions of the rules not governed by the Code of Ordinances or state law can be temporarily suspended by affirmative vote of a majority. Adding in references to just the state law. And we follow Robert's rules here, so, we can do a temporary suspension if we've got some matter going on. There's information in here about the administrative staff. Members of the administrative staff observe the same rules of procedure and decorum as the members of the council, and they don't have a voice and aren't recognized unless it had said the mayor, or the chair, the mayor, but it really is the council member or city manager. Anybody could call on a member of staff to ask them. So we added those in and clarified that remarks and questions addressed to the council shall be addressed to the council as a whole and not to any individual member of council or to individual members of staff. If someone's at a public hearing, they need to be talking to the council, not directing comments to staff. And then as far as citizens, there have always been rules in here about citizens' behavior and just kind of being respectful and, not making noise so that it can't be heard. The conversations can't be heard. There were references to sergeant at arms, and the police chief was the sergeant at arms. I don't know that he would appreciate being that, but certainly we took out those types of things. None of that changed really with regard to behaviors of residents. It's still the same, just recognizing the rules of decorum. And we did remove the specific time for the council meeting to start because it had 7:30 on the third Thursday. So we removed that, and we removed the address because it had an old address in here for when the city council is meeting.
Oh my gosh.
Forever ago.
We updated.
They're playing now.
Yes.
And we updated things like the special meetings can be called by the mayor and the city manager. It had or by 3 members of the council. That creates quorum issues. So we did revert that back to the mayor or the city manager. So if council members want a special meeting, they can talk to either the mayor or the city manager, and then they can work that through. Workshop meetings, we did say that they were just kind of out there saying we had them. We said they can be held in conjunction with regular meetings because that's what we do. And I did post, because sometimes I get this question here and other places, can we take action in a workshop? If you specifically post for it, you can. And there may be some scenarios where you want to have a workshop and then take action. So we added in, there was no action in a workshop unless we post for that action, which is Open Meetings Act. So that's what we would do anyway. There were rules in here about recessing the meeting to a later time, and that's not consistent with the Open Meetings Act anymore. You can recess it under certain circumstances the following day. So we just made that basically to say you can recess as you're allowed under the Open Meetings Act. And the notices saying that it's on the bulletin board, we're just saying it's at the designated place in City Hall and on the website because we're now required to place that on the website. As far as preservation of order, it had reference to the presiding officer and the sergeant at arms again. So we just basically said the presiding officer can enforce that. So as the chair of the meeting, the mayor should be doing that if something happens. He doesn't need to have somebody else do that. He can certainly do that. Let's see. We removed things like show of hands since we now have the voting board. Y'all can still show hands if the voting board doesn't work, but that was how we voted.
Never happens.
That was how it worked in here before. Let's see. We did add a little clause to the future agenda items. Lonnie, you want to pull up to that one because that may be one they want to look at. 30.035.
Oh my goodness.
30.035. So on the future agenda items, we added that language in red. So we don't really want to vote on future agenda items, but if somebody wants one and people are opposed to that, then there should be a mechanism so that we don't bring things back. And that You know, we just talked about that as an issue that, you know, before work gets done on agenda items, we need to be sure everybody really wants to talk about that agenda item. So that might not be the language, but that's one of those things, just give that some thought on what might be a good way to do that. And I know, you know, in the past, we've had people say, I want a future agenda item, and then, you know, Scott's got to get that agenda up and get it in a queue to get on the agenda. So just we were trying to give a little bit more order to that. So like I said, that might not be the exact words, but that was one of the things we were looking at that was more of a substantive, how do y'all want to handle that issue?
Some required 2 council members have to make the request, and we didn't go that far. We just thought to give it a little balance, we could do it this way, but that's certainly not a huge thing.
Yes, and the oral presentations by the city manager, we took that out because Open Meetings Act does not allow the city manager to just start talking about stuff. We would have to post something at least for him to give an update on that, so we removed that.
So that's, I'm sorry, just to make sure, that's back when they did this a long time ago. They just do a general update from city manager. Next thing you know, you're talking about a million things that aren't on the agenda. So that's why the law changed.
And now, their AG opinion, if there are things that the manager wants to talk about or staff is gonna talk about, then we bullet point those on the agenda to give something so the public can know, hey, I might wanna listen to that, maybe I should come to that meeting or watch it online. So yeah, we just took that out because it didn't comply. And then on the time limit to speak, right now we have the 3 minutes or less. The law changed a few years ago. If someone is hearing impaired and needs an interpreter or speaks a different language and needs an interpreter, they get a longer period of time. So we just added language to make that, 3 minutes or as required by the Texas Open Meetings Act to make sure that that was how it went. On 30.037, we did determine that there was language in there about voting on proclamations, which you're not really required to vote on. So that language was in there. So we did, you see it up there? I think it's here.
No, I don't want that proclamation.
So we may have not redlined that one. So anyway, we're
Sorry,
taking
yeah.
that one out because we don't vote on proclamations.
Yeah.
They're proclamations.
Right.
Um,
I'm reading the police
think
week
the ones I vote
proclamation.
against.
Y'all okay with that?
Seems
That's
pretty hard.
Well,
very
object.
controversial.
And so, let's see, distribution of ordinances, this had, the city secretary was gonna prepare printed copies, so we said when requested, if you want a printed copy, then Lana will get you one, but if not, it was not worth killing the trees to print all the papers.
Not singling anybody out.
And, we do roll call votes every now and then when the state law requires, so we did add this, and I don't know what this one, where sample this came from. It shall not be in order for members to explain their vote during the roll call. So that's just kind of a regular Robert's rules. During the vote, you're not supposed to be explaining. So that was just, I don't know where that came from, but it came from one of the samples I think we were looking at. We did clarify on requirements for voting, that you can't vote just because you don't have enough, can't say you have a conflict just because you don't have enough information. It truly is, we need to follow state law and file the affidavit and leave the room if you have a conflict, so that, you're not in there. If it's a conversation about a topic you have an interest in, you should not be in there. And then 30.048, some appropriations of money, had a lot of language in there about how we were gonna do for appropriation of money. Well, that's gonna end up being a budget amendment, so Scott brings those and talks to y'all, and Leanne does, and then if we need to do that and y'all want to do that, then we bring you back an ordinance. So we kind of cleaned that up. And just clarified that majority vote is a majority vote of the council qualified to vote. Doesn't include the mayor because he votes in a tie. So like I said, most of this was cleanup, just to kind of get us up to date. This was initially adopted, I think, in 1990. And it's been, oh my gosh, it's been adopted, it's been in 99, it was amended, and so anyway, it's really old, and it may be something that y'all want to look at and see if there's anything else that you are interested in changing. That what we did, since we were already doing the boards and commissions, we're like, let's just do a little cleanup on this one too. So that's what this was about.
Great. Any questions, comments?
That was beautiful.
Thanks again for going through and doing that. Makes us look professional.
I'm a little sad about the loss of the sergeant at arms, but otherwise.
Oh, you wanna
it's
keep
solid
that in there?
changes. Yeah. I kinda just want one time
Killer.
somebody to have to call out. I want the sergeant at arms to take action.
I only did it once. Okay. Anybody have any items on tonight's regular agenda that you want to discuss? Okay. If not, we got time to go into
We
executive.
do have closed session, and you have a public hearing that doesn't start till 6:30, so we could do
Okay.
closed session
So
or.
right now, we're going to go into executive session under section 551.087, and it's at
6 up and 3.
6:10.